Okay, so there were 7 5s and 4 4s. That was the score distribution. All right, any questions on the test? Yeah.
Number 9.
Okay. Number 9, they're giving you a piecewise function. F of x equals, the first piece is absolute value of x over x, or x not 0, and 0 of x equals to 0. So if you graph this function, okay, if you graph this function, for positive numbers, this is just x over x, so it's 1, right? So for positive numbers, it looks like that. For negative numbers, this ends up being like negative x over x, negative 1. And then at 0, it's 0. That's what this function looks like. So if they want you to find the integral from negative 5 to 3, like if negative 5 is over here, and 3 is here, right? Then we're really talking about like this total signed area. And if you think about it, like this little rectangle here is going to cancel with this little rectangle here, right? Because one's negative, one's positive. So what you end up with is just this little rectangle, which is 2 by 1. So the answer is negative 2. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Is there any other way to solve this, or
Geometrically is really the only way to do it. I mean, you could do it analytically, but it's way harder. Like you'd have to say this is 1 if x is greater than 0, negative 1 if x is less than 0, and 0 if x equals 0. Then you could just do like the integral from negative 2 or negative 5 to 0 of 1 dx, or negative 1 dx, plus the integral from 0 to 2 of 1 dx. It's way more work, you know what I mean? But you could do it this way. But if you recognize that this is what the function actually is, then graphically it's definitely an easier way to do it. Yeah?
Can you go over the free response?
Sure. So the free response was a separable differential equation. So we have dy dx equals y minus 2 times x squared plus 1. So the first part of this is just to solve the separable differential equation with the initial condition is 0 equals 5. Okay, so remember, first step is to separate the variables. So this ends up being dy over y minus 2 equals x squared plus 1 dx. That's worth 1 point, separating the variables. The next step is to integrate both sides. So this ends up being ln absolute value of y minus 2 equals x cubed over 3 plus x plus c. That's worth 2 points, 1 point for each antiderivative. Okay? The next step is to either solve for y or figure out what c is. I'm going to figure out what c is first, but you could have done it the other way just as well. Okay? So I'm going to substitute in the point 0, 5. So this ends up being ln 3 equals 0 plus 0 plus c. So c is ln 3. That's worth 1 point, is having the plus c and correctly finding it using the initial condition. And then substitute that back in. So you have ln absolute value of y minus 2 equals x cubed over 3 plus x plus ln 3. Now, is the absolute value necessary in this problem? it's not necessary. And we know that because if you substitute y equals 5 in, the absolute value doesn't change anything. Okay, if this had been ln of 2 minus y, then yes, the absolute value would be necessary because it's changing something. Okay? So this ends up being y minus 2 equals e to the x cubed over 3 plus x plus ln 3. And you have to make it clear. Some people, it wasn't totally clear that this whole thing is in the exponent. Like, put it in parentheses if it's really unclear. Okay, because if they're looking at this and it looks like the ln 3 is down here and not in the exponent, they won't give you credit for that. They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So this ends up being 2 plus e to the x cubed over 3 plus x plus ln 3. And this could be written 2 plus 3e to the x cubed over 3 plus x. Like, that's the same thing, because you could break out the e to the ln 3 separately, and that's equal to 3. So either one of these two is the correct answer. That's g of x. Okay? That was worth 5 points, just that part of it. 1 point for separation of variables, 2 points for the two antiderivatives, 1 point for having the plus c and using the initial condition, and 1 point for solving for y correctly. Any questions on that part? Another thing, if you don't have a plus c, the most points that you could possibly get is 3 points. 1 point for separating variables, and 1 point for having the correct antiderivatives. If you didn't separate the variables at the beginning, you can get 0 points on this question. Okay, so just be really careful about the response questions that involve exponential or differential equations, because if you make a wrong turn at the beginning, it could be all over. Okay, the second part of this says find the limit as x goes to negative infinity of whatever you got in part A. So if I have the limit as x goes to negative infinity of, and you could use either expression. I'll use the top one, but it really doesn't matter. 2 plus e to the x cubed over 3 plus x plus ln 3. So the first thing that you should realize is that if you substitute a negative infinity here, then this whole exponent is going to negative infinity, right? The whole exponent is going to negative infinity. Because if you take a negative and you cube it, and you take a negative and you just have it there, this whole thing is going to be going to negative infinity. Agreed? But if the whole thing is going to negative infinity, then e to that power is going to be going to 0. Right? Because if you think about what e to the x looks like, as x goes to negative infinity, e to the x goes to 0. So if this whole part of it is going to 0, then this whole answer is just going to be 2 plus 0. It's 2. That's all there is to it. That was worth 1 point for the correct answer. And that's it. There's no explanation involved or anything like that, but that's the answer. Any questions on that? Okay, and then the last part of this says, let f of x be the particular solution with the given initial condition f of 1 equals 3. Find the value of d squared y over dx squared at that point. Okay, so they're giving you the problem, the original problem, dy dx. It's y minus 2 times x squared plus 1. So all you have to do is just take the derivative of this to get the second derivative. That's it. So d squared y over dx squared is the derivative of this. Now, you have to be careful. You have to use implicit differentiation and also the product rule here, because it's a product. So it's going to be the first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first, which is just y prime. But you actually have to substitute this y prime with this whole expression. This is y prime right here. That goes there. So the second derivative is really y minus 2 times 2x plus x squared plus 1 times y minus 2 times x squared plus 1. Is everybody okay with that? Now you just have to evaluate this at the point 1, 3. So you'd say the notation, remember, is d squared y over dx squared at the point 1, 3. That's the notation for that. Equals 3 minus 2 times 2 times 1 plus 1 squared plus 1 times 3 minus 2 times 1 squared plus 1. And then just evaluate it. This is 6, not 6, minus 2. It's 1 times 2 plus 2 times 1 times 2. So this is 2 plus 4, it's 6. And the question is the graph concave up or concave down at that point? This is greater than 0. So since d squared y over dx squared is greater than 0 at 0 or 1, 3, f of x is concave up at 1, 3. And that's the complete explanation. Second derivative is positive, that means concave up. Everybody understand? This question was worth 3 points. 2 points for having the correct second derivative up to this point, and then 1 point for stating that it's concave up with a reason. Okay, what else on the test? Yeah. Number 10. This is one of those d substitutions where they're checking to see if you know how to do it the other way, right? So you have the integral from 2 to 3 of g of 2x minus 1 dx. So if you were doing u substitution here, u is equal to 2x minus 1, du equals 2 dx, dx equals du over 2. Then when you make the substitution, you have g of u times du over 2. And remember, you have to change these limits of integration, right? If x is 2, which these are x values, if x is 2, then u would be 4 minus 1 is 3. So that goes here. And if x is 3, which is, this is an x value, then u would be 6 minus 1, which is 5. So this is the answer right here. The integral from 3 to 5 of g of u divided by 2, which is choice D.
So I guess I missed this question, but how do you know when you change the limits versus when you don't?
Okay, that's a good question. So like, let's say it was, let's do an actual example. Like, let's say it was something like the integral from 2 to 3, and let's say it was 2x minus, or plus or minus? Minus 1. 2x minus 1 cubed. Let's say that's the problem, okay? So g of x is like x cubed. So there's 2 ways to do this. One way to do it is u equals 2x minus 1, du equals 2 dx, dx equals du over 2. Make the substitution. So this is u cubed times du over 2. Don't change the limits of integration. Do the integration, so you get u to the 4th over 4 times 2, which is u to the 4th over 8. Then substitute back into x's, 2x minus 1 to the 4th over 8, and evaluate it from 2 to 3. So in this case, you would get, if you plug 3 in, you get 5 to the 4th over 8. And if you plug 2 in, you get 3 to the 4th over 8. So that's the answer. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, it's a totally different way to do it, is you could make the substitution, but then change the limits of integration. So this would end up being the integral from u of u cubed du over 2. And then you change the limits of integration like we did in the previous problem, which goes from 3 to 5. But you can see that this is going to end up being the same thing. This is u to the 4th over 8, also, from 3 to 5. Don't substitute back into x's now, and you'll get the same answer, 5 to the 4th over 8 minus 3 to the 4th over 8. Same answer. So it's just two different ways of doing it. If I'm doing it on my own, I prefer this way for some reason, because it's kind of like less to have to worry about. Like you don't have to worry about changing the limits of integration. But they test you often on, do you know how to do it this way? And it's just another way to do the same thing.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
26.
26. So what type of problem is this? Long division. There's no quotient rule for integrals. So if you have a quotient like this, there's only a couple options. It could be a u substitution thing, but that would only work if the u that you pick has its derivative or some constant multiple of its derivative as a factor of the integrand also, and that doesn't really work here. So the only other thing, I mean, it could be, if it's a fraction like this, it could be like an inverse trig thing, but this definitely doesn't have a form like that. So u substitution is the way to go here. Not u substitution, long division. So you do long division, x squared minus x minus 5 divided by x plus 2. So this ends up being x squared plus 2x, and then subtract. You have negative 3x minus 5, so this is minus 3. Negative 3x minus 6, and then you subtract. So you get plus 1 over x plus 2. So this original division problem, this original quotient, is really just this thing right here. So this is the integral from 1 to 2 of x minus 3 plus 1 over x plus 2 dx. Now we can easily integrate. This is just x squared over 2 minus 3x plus ln, absolute value of x plus 2, from 1 to 2. So if you plug in 2, you get 4 halves minus 6 plus ln 4. And if you plug in 1, you get 1 half minus 3 plus ln 3. So if you combine all the constants, 2 minus 6 is negative 4, plus 3, negative 1, minus a half is negative 3 halves, plus ln 4 minus ln 3. So this is negative 3 halves plus ln 4/3. That's the laws of logarithms. That's choice A. Anything else? Yeah, John? 85. This one was like a tricky reading comprehension issue, okay? It says people are entering a building at a rate modeled by f of t. So f of t is a derivative. It's a rate, right? And they're exiting the building at the rate modeled by g of t. So g of t is also a derivative. It's the derivative of the number of people, right? F and g are non-negative and differentiable. Which of the following inequalities indicates that the rate of change of the number of people in the building is increasing? Okay, so they're not asking you to say how you know if the number of people in the building is increasing. If they wanted you to tell them how you would know if the number of people is increasing, then it's just f of t minus g of t is positive, because those are both rates, right? But they want to know that the rate of change of the number of people is increasing. If a rate of change is increasing, that means that the second derivative has to be positive, right? But f and g are both derivatives, so the second derivative would be f prime and g prime. So that's why it's d. F prime is the rate at which f is changing. It's the rate at which the rate of change is changing. And g is the rate at which g is changing. So f minus g is the rate at which f minus g is changing. F prime minus g prime is the rate at which f minus g is changing. And f minus g is the rate at which the number of people is changing. You get what I'm saying? So if you want to know when that quantity is increasing, you take its derivative and you get it. Those are tricky. A lot of people got that one wrong. It's a tricky, like, reading comprehension problem. So try and work it out in your brain if you're still confused. What else?
89.
89. So they're giving you a table of values. So we have x and f of x. The x values are 0, 4, 6, 8, and 13. And the y values are 3, 4.5, 3, 2.5, and 4.4. And the question says, it's a continuous function. What's the fewest possible number of times f of x equals 4? So what type of problem is this? Intermediate value theorem, right? If the function is 3 at one point, and then it's 4.5 at another point, then it has to hit every y value in between, including 4, right? So there has to be a point in between these two y values where it equals 4. There has to be a point in between these two y values where it equals 4. And there has to be a point in between these two y values where it equals 4. So there's, at minimum, 3 possible y values that equal 4. Now, there could be more, right? Like, the function could be, like, totally crazy and just go through 4 a bunch of times in each little interval. But at minimum, it has to be at least 3. That make sense? And what are the hypotheses of the intermediate value theorem? What has to be true in order for the intermediate value theorem to hold?
Continuous.
Just continuous. Yeah. As long as it's continuous, then it can't get from here to here without hitting every y value in between. The mean value theorem hypotheses are continuous differential. All right, anything else? Yeah? Sure. 19. This is the limit as x goes to e of x to the 20th minus x cubed, minus 3x minus e to the 20th minus 3e over x minus e. What type of problem is this? Yeah, limit definition of derivative. Remember, this is like the second form of it. It's the limit as x goes to a of f of x minus f of a over x minus a. This is f prime of a. And that's what we have here. This is f of x. This is f of a. And a is e, right? So this answer is just going to be the derivative of f of x, 20x to the 19th minus 3. Evaluated, so this is f prime of x. Evaluated at e. So f prime of e would be 20e to the 19th minus 3. That's choice B. Okay, remember the other form of limit definition of derivative is limit as h goes to 0, f of a plus h minus f of a over h. So if they gave us this same problem, but it was in this form, then it would say the limit as h goes to 0 of e plus h to the 20th minus 3e plus h minus e to the 20th minus 3e over h. It would look like that. That makes sense? This is f of e plus h minus f of e over h. And maybe they would simplify this a little bit by distributing the negative and combining terms or whatever, but that would be more complicated. Anything else? Okay. So, what are we going to do next? So, we have 2 weeks from tomorrow is the AP test. 2 weeks from tomorrow. So, what we're going to do is we're going to come up to the board and do problems. Don't be scared. So, I don't mean for this to be like a super high pressure thing. There's no judgment whatsoever. The goal is we just want to get everyone so that they can do the best that they can in 2 weeks. Okay? So I don't want anybody to be scared of this process. So here's how it's going to work. I have a practice Regents exam that's on the smartboard that I can just put everything on there. And I have this little container that has every single question on it. So when it's your turn, you're just going to come up and draw a number and do that question. So it's totally random. The free response questions are in here also. If somebody gets a free response question, then the way it'll work is that person will do part A, the next person in line will do part B of the same question. So that way we complete the whole free response question at one time. Is everybody understanding this? This is not graded or anything like that. I'm going to ask you questions about the problem, and I want you to like show your work. Like every question is a free response question. I want you to show your work, and I'm going to ask clarifying questions if it's unclear. Is everybody understanding what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
We start today.
Yeah, we're going to start right now. Does anybody want to go first?
Dinner. Fun guy.
All right, so we're just going to do it alphabetically, but we're not going to start from the beginning of the alphabet. We're going to start from the middle of the alphabet.
Oh.
Yes. So wherever. So there's 11 people in the class. Number 6 is Bella. So you're first.
Wait,
So you pick a number.
okay.
So remember, we're all here to help each other. If she can't answer a question, then I'm going to call on somebody like to try and help her. She can phone a friend. 27. Okay, so 27 is multiple choice. So I literally just like copied and pasted all the questions. So 27. Let's finish. Okay. Okay, here's 27. So we have this graph of f prime, and it says which of the following statements must be true about f?
So one is obviously true, because if it's differentiable, it's continuous.
Very good.
2 is not true, because this part means that it's inclusive of it, inclusive, sure,
Right, so this is f prime. What she's saying is if f prime is positive, which it is on that first little chunk, that means f is actually increasing, not decreasing, right? Okay, good.
and then f double prime would be negative, which would be, but yeah.
Others.
I agree. Any questions? Let's check the answer. 27 is C. Yeah. Good job.
Nice.
So just from a test taking perspective, like if I was doing this question, I would have actually written stuff down. Like I would have said, this is continuous, like, just to keep track of what you're doing. And then I would say, this is not true, this is true. It just helps keep you from making a silly mistake at the end. Okay? But excellent job. Any questions on any part of this problem? Okay, so next is Maggie. 24. Whoops.
You know what? This one's.
Okay. So if the average value of a continuous function is 12, then what is that integral equal to?
Well, when I just done 12 and 5, right?
No, they're not saying the function equals 12. They're saying that the average value is 12. Anybody have an idea? She can phone a friend. Yeah, Aiden.
So the average value, like formula or whatever, would be like 1/12 times the integral of -2 to 4.
1/6.
Yeah, 1/6. Yeah, so write this down. 1/6 times the integral from -2 to 4 of f of x. And that equals 12.
Oh, and then the other one is 1/8.
Yeah, so then on the other one, you just take the 1/8 because it's a constant, put it out front, and then you just need to multiply 12 times whatever, like, constant would get 1/6 or one. So it would be like,
So 12 times 6 is 72, so 1/8 is 72 is 9. So that's just 9. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Wait, how'd you get 9?
So because it's 1/12 or 1/6 of that equals 12, you multiply 12 by 6 to get what it was before.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
1/8 of that is.
Yeah. Does that make sense? 24, the correct answer is C. Okay? Does that make sense? Remember the formula is 1 over b minus a times the integral from a to b of f of x. Now be careful, if this was a free response question, you gotta have dx. You gotta have dx, right? So just get into the habit of including dx when you do integrals. Any questions on this? Next, John.
Okay.
88. So that's a calculator question. You can use the one on the board.
I could vote for all of them.
Sure.
I don't
So
know
it's right
for all of them.
So let f be the function, found by this, let g be this other function. The line tangent to the graph of f at x equals 2 is parallel to the line tangent to the graph of g at x equals a. What is a? But you gotta get out of the exponent.
Okay, so I would have to do the derivative of that. Which
Okay.
is, 2 over x squared plus 1.
It was 2x over, right?
X equals 2. Is this one? Well,
So if that,
okay, So that's equal to this.
Or if it's,
The 4/5, yeah, it's the same slope, yeah.
you can use the calculator here.
So you don't actually need those that are there. Oop, here you go, there's one. Good extra. Hello? Sure, no problem. Yep, thanks. I got a question. How did you know to make the window from 0 to 1?
Just do the whole thing.
Okay, good, that's good.
So C.
Good. 88 is C. Good job. Any questions on that? All right, so we'll pick it up here tomorrow. And if you're online, make sure you're online live so you can participate.